Jack Kiefer on your right. Both these players 1-0. Grixis Green versus Jeskai Black.
And as you mentioned, the Kiefer family very passionate about Magic. All three of the children playing in the tournament today. They even hosted Chris Anderson for the week. He hung out with them and play tested, and they drove over to the event together today.
Some families travel for sports. I did when I was younger, traveling for soccer and wrestling. Some families travel for Magic, and I think this is fantastic. Maybe we'll see more families like this. For Steven Garcia, a lumbering falls into a cinder glade is how he'll start things. A mystic monastery here for Jack Kiefer. Now he'll sacrifice a flooded strand. So down to 19 he goes. We'll see what land he wants to search up and what his turn 2 play will be.
Kiefer's deck list is at least sorted by color.
You can appreciate it.
It's not labeled, but it's white cards, blue cards, black cards, red cards, gold cards, lands. This is an easy deck list for me to view.
Perfect. And now here's the Jace. And for you, it's all about ease.
And there's a space, and there's a space between each column.
Yep.
3 Soulfire Grandmaster, 1 Valor Stance, space. 1 Dig Through Time, 4 Jace Prince Prodigy, 2 Negate, space. It's good.
Being taught well at a young age.
I'm sure he gets good grades in school.
Definitely. Lock it in. We'll see what turn number 3 is here for Steven Garcia, as he's already facing down a Jace.
I think Garcia is in a bit of a non-basic land trap. This can happen with some of these decks where you start off with a non-battle land duel. That comes into play tapped. Then your next land comes into play tapped because it's a battle land. You don't have any basics. You can play off curve for the whole game, opening up with something like Lumbering Falls or Yavimaya Coast. It doesn't happen all the time, but these decks with these extra lands that aren't battle lands and aren't basics can get tripped up in the early turns.
You saw Garcia maybe thinking about sacrificing Polluting Delta, took it back briefly, and now he says, yeah, actually I will sacrifice this, get a basic island. What he's without right now is black mana. That's what Delta would like to find. It'd like to find Sunken Hollow to be able to cast Savage Knuckleblade. It looks like he's just going to be going towards Knuckleblade here now. And really, if you take a look at his deck list, this is, you know, kind of basically a blue-black deck. A little bit of red splashed in here, obviously, for Knuckleblade and Roast, but he's actually going out to play a Splash or Savage Knuckleblade, so must feel pretty strongly about that card.
Yep. Not a card that I'm that positive on, but people have won tournaments with this thing.
It's been doing well recently. We had the Open Series in Kansas City where Josh McClain did top 8 with Teamer Black. A Roast is going to take care of Knuckleblade. Now Mystic Monastery and pass the turn back over to Steven Garcia. Does have a copy of Sunken Hollow in hand, so black mana does not appear to be much of a bottleneck, though it will enter the battlefield tapped if that's his land for the turn. And there's Sunken Hollow and pass the turn back. Kiefer going to untap with Jace yet again.
You can see Garcia unable to cast either Kolagon's Command or Tassiger that turn, and this is all a consequence of really opening up on Lumbering Falls. There's been consequences for that opening every turn of the game thus far.
And we'll find out over the course of the game if kind of the deck building cost of playing Lumbering Falls is worth it.
Yep.
It's a one-game snapshot, but it has had a huge effect on this game. There's a basic swamp.
Now that I'm playing a lot of Standard myself, been diving in, it's the card I'm most surprised people play.
Lumbering Falls?
Yes.
Yeah. I think it is a good card, just in a vacuum.
It's got matchups and spots where it's great.
Yeah.
But the cost is enormous on this card, I think.
I think we're going to have a Jace activation here. Kiefer figuring out what he wants to discard. It'll be a mountain. Jace is flipping.
Shambling Vent is at least so good in the right matchups, in the right spots that, you know, you can pay that cost.
Mantis Rider into the air. Garcia going to fall down to 16. And now Jace going to go up to 6. And we're going to head back Steven Garcia's way. He'll draw a card. Black mana online now.
And this is big trouble here. You see Garcia's hand. He's got Kolagon's Command. That's not a huge help here. He's got Gurmag Angler and Tassiger, neither of which he can cast right now because Kiefer can simply flash back the Roast in his graveyard via Jace and kill it. He's jammed up in a couple respects here.
It's very clunky right now. You know, you play Tassiger, you delve away your graveyard. I don't know if he has enough to cast Angler. Sure, that's fine too, but Roast is a fine answer.
Right, and so Garcia is going to basically be taking off a couple turns here to try to get a Tassiger into play while he's getting clocked in the air by a Mantis Rider, and Kiefer still got a bunch of cards in his hand.
This is exactly the kind of game that Jeskai wants to play. Very tempo-y. We'll see if Jack does want to recast that roast in the graveyard.
Well, it's a suspicious play. I mean, if you're Kiefer, you want to give this a second because the turn looks so bad that Garcia's got to be trying to set up something. There's no way he's just casting this into the jaws of your roast with no backup plan, but it's still too good of a spot to give up.
There's the roast. Here's an attack for 3. See some onlookers there behind Jack and Joe Lissette and Chris Anderson, Open Series mainstays.
Yeah. You give a guy a bed for a week, he's going to be in your corner, you know? And Anderson with 2 buys, nothing else to do.
Hey,
Might as well.
Get your bird on.
Yeah.
Let's like transgress the mind, the draw. Here's Tassiger for Garcia. He's going to delve away that Gurmag Angler just died to roast. Lumbering Falls number 2. Pastor Man, that's a lot of those.
Well, the decks that play it usually have 2 or 3 copies. It's part of the plan, you know?
See how Kiefer wants to use Jace here. Gonna start by playing another Jace. This one will go up to 4, slow Tasker down a bit. And now an attack for 3 is gonna put Garcia down to 10.
And Chris Anderson had a lot of praise for the Kiefers just collectively. I asked him before he went out there, like how good do you think these kids are? I haven't watched them play a lot. And Anderson said, I'm staying with them for the week, and they are definitely good enough that playtesting with them is informative.
Okay.
Which is a pretty high bar. I mean, that's the, okay, this person's good enough where if I'm playing matches against them, I think how often I'm winning and losing is reflective of the matchup. That's the first critical line to cross, in my opinion.
I agree. It's nice. I mean, 3 of them, so, I can only imagine the family dynamic of just, do you want to test? Oh, yeah. No. Let's get some games in. It looks like Mantis Rider stepped in front of Tassiger, I believe.
Yep.
Which means that Kolaghan's command can do some nice work here.
Right, Kolaghan's command is kind of a squeeze here for Kiefer no matter how he plays this out. Because if he says no blocks, then the Tassiger, assuming it was going after Jace, Kolaghan's command finishes it off. Blocks this way, the Kolaghan's command can take care of the Mantis Rider. If you have negate it, doesn't matter at all.
It does not. Negate will take care of Kolaghan's command. Now Kiefer will sacrifice a Flooded Strand. He'll search up a land. Likely to be a battle land, but we'll see what he wants to find.
And Garcia here couldn't lead off with the duress first because he's only got 1 black mana. The reason he's only got 1 black mana is because he had to use a polluted delta to get an island instead of a dual land on turn 3 to cast his Savage Knuckleblade, and that's a consequence of the Lumbering Falls. So all of what you're seeing right now is a consequence of the land that got put into play on turn 1.
Kiefer gonna untap. He'll take a draw step. Not a lot of action right now in Jack's hand. Looks like just a couple of lands. Bloodstained Mire, Mystic Monastery, stuff like that. Unclear if he wants to activate Jace Vryn's Prodigy at this point because there's a Jace Telepath Unbound on the battlefield, but there's also not a lot to flash back.
Yeah, and that's the reason probably just to hang tight with Jace for the time being. It means that Kiefer can throw away the Planeswalker Jace or let Garcia attack it down or whatever. And there's no rush to flip over the second one because, as you mentioned, there's nothing really to flash back. Only a negate, and that's not a great 1-2 flash back.
There are better options. Looks like he's got something to cast here, however. And it looks like it might be a copy of Utter End. Yeah,
well, that certainly raises the value of the other Jason play.
Inclined to agree. The follow-up is a Bloodstained Mire. Jace gonna go up to 5, and now pass that turn back. Garcia will draw. Copy of Fiery Impulse. Not a lot of cards in the graveyard here for Steven.
Yeah, between the Gurmag Angler and the Tassiger to follow up, his graveyard's been swallowed up here.
See if Garcia wants to leave with Duress or Transgress the Mind. I think we'll see a discard spell this turn no matter what. just trying to figure out which one to lead with, and maybe deciding if he wants to lead at all. This game is not looking particularly good for Steven, so it's unclear if he even wants to show discard spells, but he will. He'll cast a Duress. Kiefer will show a Mystic Monastery. Not a lot going on, obviously, in Jack's hand. Now, Fiery Impulse can take down that Jace. Looks like it's going to go after the Mantis Rider. Must have Spell Mastery. It wouldn't die if he didn't. Oh, Kolaghan's Command plus Duress. Spell Mastery achieved.
Okay, yep. The command from
just his graveyard's a little off screen, so we're good. There's Smoldering Marsh. Now a couple of Jason on the battlefield, but no clock here for Jack. So we'll see what comes next with the draw step. Again, Mystic Monastery, the only card in hand for him. For Garcia, just a copy of Transgress the Mind. Kiefer will draw.
Kiefer is pretty good draw step there.
I've seen worse.
Kiefer is definitely de-emphasized Dig Through Time in this deck. Tassiger is what he's using for the graveyard here, and he's got 2 copies of Painful Truth to supplement the card drawing.
Dragmaster Outcast was the play. Jace up to 6, pass it on back. Crater's Claw is the draw here for Steven Garcia. That'll play.
Yeah, nothing wrong with it. You at least get the Outcast off the table. Unfortunately, you're playing against a deck with a lot of copies of Ojutai's Command, so not a permanent way to get it off, but better than this thing going active.
Crater's Claws for 1. Dragmaster Outcast down. I suppose we could see Kiefer potentially activate Jace Vryn's Prodigy to try to spike a counterspell. He might be thinking that right now.
I don't know. I think the late game favors Kiefer so much right now that there's no reason to take that kind of risk. It's definitely a conversation. It's worth at least double checking, but if I'm Kiefer, I'm happy for this game just to go on for a long time and not take any risks like that.
There's Mystic Monastery. And Jack gonna take a look at the graveyard. Looks like Jace is just gonna go up to 7 and pass the turn back, working away towards the ultimate.
Kiefer's just got so many awesome draws at this point. Crackling Doom, Mantis Rider, Ojutai's Command, Tassiger, Painful Truths, and Dig Through Time are all superstars for him.
Yeah.
So I'm happy just being patient.
Lumbering Fall's gonna giddy up into the red zone. It caused a lot of trouble in the early stages of the game. We'll see if it can actually get Garcia back into this one. There's a Wooded Foothills pass the turn back. Garcia going after Kiefer's life total as opposed to Jace because, well, there's another Jace already out there.
It would take Garcia so many turns to get the Jace off the table, and that would just allow Kiefer to activate a new Jace that he might as well go after the life total even though Kiefer's still pretty high.
And Jace gonna go up to 8. Jack will just pass the turn back. Over to Steven Garcia we go. Transgress the Mind, now Bloodstained Mire in hand. Lumbering Fall's going to come in. This time it's actually going to go after Jace. Maybe a little worried about the ultimate. A little bit of incongruous there.
Yeah, you typically want to be doing one or the other.
There's a Prairie Stream. Kiefer down at 12, Garcia at 7. You mentioned it a couple times. A lot of big draw steps available here for Kiefer. Maybe Ojutai's Command, the best of the bunch.
Painful Truths, Tassiger, Dig Through Time. I mean, Mantis Rider is excellent here.
It's a lot of goodies. Just got to find one.
I think Kiefer has just been finding a lot of lands for the time being.
At the Bloodstained Mire, it's another one. Jace going to move up even more to 6. Kiefer will pass the turn back. Curious to see if he's ever going to lose his patience with the other Jace that's just out there doing nothing. I like the fact that he hasn't activated it.
As long as Garcia is just attacking the Planeswalker, Kiefer doesn't have to make any sort of move. I know it's frustrating to be in this spot where you know you have a lot of awesome draws, and if you find one of them, you probably end the game, but there's no rush to move.
Garcia hasn't done anything to force his hand.
Exactly.
That's for sure. He just keeps activating Lumbering Falls.
And on top of that, Kiefer's still got the Utter End in the graveyard. So it's not like Garcia could even put a problematic threat on the table.
Sure.
It'll just die.
Duress was the draw this turn for Garcia. he will cast that. I think we're going to see a land maybe in Jack's hand. Oh, it looks like it might be something. Okay, never mind. Just the plains.
Not a big fan of that sequencing there from Garcia because if the draw step was Crackling Doom, that looks pretty bad.
I would want to lead on duress then.
I would want to lead on duress.
Yeah, I would want to lead there with the discard spell. It's a very good point.
It doesn't look great.
No.
It's not one you're going to put on your highlight tape.
Well, Kiefer going to sack another fetch land, get another land out of his deck, and hope for a good draw step. Just trying to increase the percentages a little bit on a relevant draw. So we'll see what the draw step does yield here for Jack. Again, we know he's got a basic plains in his hand. He's got to draw a spell sometime, right?
Well, some of his spells are removal spells that aren't necessarily well equipped for what's happening right now.
Hey, look, it's a Mana Strider.
Mana Strider definitely plays.
Yeah. In for 3, Garcia down to 4. This is a problem card for his deck.
Yes.
Not very good against flyers. Does have ways to get off the battlefield, cards like Fiery Impulse. But you take a look at his deck list, 2 Ruinous Path as well, but it's actually a hard card for him to get off the battlefield. Jake's going to go up to 7 there for Jack. And Steven might be considering sacrificing a fetch land here, going down to 3.
So if he goes down to 3, it's really bad news because Mana Strider just kills him.
Yep.
But the question is, if he's on Crater Claws or Bust, is he supposed to thin out his deck a little bit?
Sure. It looks like, I believe, let's check here. Okay, that's Jace, never mind. I was thinking briefly it might be Nissa.
Nissa would be great here.
Yeah.
Jace is, Kiefer's got to turn to respawn and the Jace is still in play, so.
Now Garcia will just pass the turn back. Tough thing here for Steven, too, is like he'd like to be able to activate Lumbering Falls, get in again. But that would require fetch land activation. We'll bring him down to 3. Attack from Manta Slider makes it game over, so that's off the table. Manta Slider about to work its way into combat, so Garcia going to fall down to 1.
Or now the fetch land is cut off.
Yep.
So very important for Kiefer, though. He's got to kill the Jace because I believe there's a Crater's Claws to be flashed back.
There is not enough mana to kill Jack at this point. But it's down there. What is he flashing back? It looks like it's going to be a dig through time. Delving away a couple of cards here. Kiefer going to take a look at the top 7. Gets to take 2 with him. Roast among those cards.
Yeah, any removal spell plays. I believe there's a Crackling Doom, too, which just kills Garcia, so that's fine.
There is black mana out there for Jack, so. Crackling Doom looks like one of the cards that he has selected. And now it looks like it's one of the cards that he might be casting.
Well, he can just cast Crackling Doom, and even if Garcia has a counterspell, he can just flash back with Jace.
Sure.
So, assuming, I would imagine he's got all the mana he needs to do this, but.
Another thing he can do here, and I think he might do kind of in the reverse, which is make it so that Negate has flashback with Jace.
I think
and then cast Crackling Doom.
I think he targeted Dispel.
Yeah, either's fine.
Same deal.
That'll be game number 1. Take care of that. Jack Kiefer going to win game number 1 here over Steven Garcia. Jeskai Black up a game here over Grixis Green. As we take a look at the sideboards for each one of these decks, get an idea what both players are working with. We'll start with Steven Garcia. 2 Dispel, 2 Disdainful Stroke, a Self-Inflicted Wound, 2 Rending Volley, an Ultimate Price of Languish, 2 Wild Slash, 2 Roast, and 2 copies of Radiant Flames.
I think some of this removal is going to be coming in. I don't know if he necessarily wants all of it. 2 Rending Volleys has to be for this kind of matchup. Kiefer's deck is a little susceptible to Radiant Flames as well, so wouldn't be surprised if that came in. And I think 2 copies of Dispel, excellent for Garcia here.
On the other side of things here for Jack, 2 Disdainful Stroke of his own. He's got a Dragmaster Outcast, 2 Duress, a Hollowed Moonlight against those rally decks, 2 Infinite Obliteration, a Painful Truce, a Planner Outburst, 2 Radiant Flames, 2 Self-Inflicted Wound, and an Utter End.
More creature removal here. I think the Utter End is very well suited for this matchup. I like the additional copy of Painful Truce, the Dragon Master Outcast, and the 2 Disdainful Strokes especially. Garcia's threats are on the expensive side. He has Crater's Claws as well, so I think this is a good matchup for Disdainful Stroke.
Well, those are the options there for both players. Steven Garcia will be on the play with his Grixis Green deck as game number 2 about to be underway. In the meantime, we are going to talk about the Fall Creature Collection here with Star City Games. We got playmat sleeves and player bundles of some of your game night favorites.
Yeah, we have the Hippo, the Otter, the Reindeer, and Penguillian Click, all available again. Playmat sleeves and player bundles, over at starcitygames.com/creature collection or at our dealer booth at any of the opens that we're at or any Grand Prix that we're vending at.
We will have a winter 2016 collection for you guys soon enough, but StarCityGames.com/creature collection for more information about that fall 2015 collection as we get ready here for game number 2 between Steven Garcia and Jack Kiefer. Now, some people on the old Twitter sphere at SCG Live, hashtag SCG Denver, were a part of our Minotaur conversation, wondering what Magus of the Moo tokens will be making. Apparently, a flurry of horns.
There we go.
Put 2/3 red Minotaur creature tokens. Seems a little overpowered giving him haste.
Modern staple. For your Minotaur commander decks, also, it's got to be a thing. There's so much in Homelands. So many build-arounds.
Yeah, Minotaur Overload. Best of all.
Didgeridoo.
That's the 3rd time you've brought that up today.
Second.
We're in the 2nd round. You've brought up Didgeridoo. It's not clear if that's even the correct pronunciation.
We'll go to the tape.
Multiple times. I think it's just Diggerdoo. That's probably not right. That's probably not right.
I'm not 100% positive I'm right, but I'm pretty confident my pronunciation is closer to right.
Didgeridoo. Take a Minotaur from your hand and put it directly into play.
It's basically show and tell every turn.
Yeah. You're right, it is. It is. Even good with changelings. Have you considered that?
Yeah. Chameleon Colossus.
Yep, right in. On a discount.
Yep.
Cairn Wanderer, my favorite changeling. Many abilities on that black creature. Good old Didgeridoo. What a card.
Yep. Homelands has some doozies, man.
I want to do a little Homeland. What's in the block with Homelands?
I think it's technically Ice Age and Alliances is the block. It's not super clear. It's sort of an odd thing because Fallen Empires and Homelands came out at roughly the same time, and then there's Ice Age and Alliances involved as well. I think Homelands was after Ice Age, maybe before. I can't recall exactly. But they're standalone sets, but for the purposes of Standard at the time, they were kind of considered to be a block.
Maybe a...
Not a whole lot of playable cards at a Homeland, so it didn't really matter.
How dare you? How dare you?
Serrated Arrows was very good in Standard at the time because you had a bunch of 2/1 knights floating around.
Yeah.
Merchant Scroll is powerful in older formats. It wasn't very good in Standard at the time.
Okay.
And once you're past that, I mean, you got to really dig once you're past those. Autumn Willow was good at the time. It's a card you would not put in your draft deck now. At the time, it was a good creature. I guess Ishan's Shade is reasonable.
That's a magic card right there. I had a bunch of those.
Ishan's Shade is not embarrassing. That's a reasonable card.
Legend, by the way. Summon legend.
So you can't bolt it, you can't plow it, and this was around at the time where Dark Ritual was legal in Standard. This was an okay card. This card was fine. But Homelands, there's a lot more didgeridoos than Ishan's Shades, I'll put it that way.
Okay. Well, best part of all, you know where we can get all those cards we just talked about?
Games,
That's right.
Probably not on sale.
No, you're going to have to pay full retail for Ishan's Shade.
I don't know for sure.
And Didgeridoo. And I've actually just been informed that we are now out of Didgeridoos. Everyone's bought them.
Yeah.
Did you buy them all?
No.
Okay. Well, we'll have Jack Kiefer and Steven Garcia round number 2 here underway as we are in Denver for the Open Series. First time in a couple of years here. So it's good to be back at SCG Live, hashtag SCGDEN all weekend long. So we got to watch Luis Vargas play last round. Conley Woods is here this weekend. Jerry Thompson has made the flight from Seattle. Todd Anderson, Tom Ross here from Roanoke. Chris Anderson from Indianapolis. A lot of players have flown out here.
Yeah, we have a lot of Seattle and Northern California players who just came out.
Yeah.
They weren't, they're not trying to qualify for the Players' Championship. They may or may not be staying for the Invitational next week in Vegas. But, yeah, Jerry Thompson, Sam Pardee, they're just here.
Yeah. Sometimes you just want to battle, man.
Yep.
You got that itch. You just want to play. Mystic Monastery for Kiefer. Garcia going to sacrifice his Wooded Foothills. That was his turn 1 play. He'll go down to 19. We'll see what land he wants to search up. He'll go with the Smoldering Marsh. Now, of course, when you're fetching in this particular format, You got to be careful how you go about doing it. You want to get basics to turn on those battle lands, but perhaps you need to start with a battle land sometime.
Even with a Tarka Red, I've been screwing up. And that's a deck there's not that many options.
It's pretty straightforward stuff.
Yeah. For these 4-color decks, it's quite complicated.
It's like completing a puzzle. Got to make sure you get it right. Over to Garcia, we're going to go. Bloodstained Mire, the draw. What's interesting to me is the mana, it all works. It's just you got to get it right.
Well, it doesn't necessarily work on time.
Yeah.
And that's an issue for certainly Jeskai in the beatdown matchups. It can take it a while to get the 4 colors into play. And depending on your draw, you need all 4 colors of mana very early on in the game.
There's that Dastardly Lumbering Falls again.
Yep.
It's back. Messing up the battle lands plus basic draws. We'll see what Kiefer has for turn number 2.
Lumbering Falls at the end of it. Garcia was turning it on and was at least forcing some action there. Was getting the game into a spot where possibly Creator's Clause could stole it. But a lot of the reason he fell behind in the first 5 or so turns of the game was just having that land on the first turn.
Yep. Kiefer going to go with a basic swamp off the Pluto Delta. That's why he's down to 19. And now, Soulfire Grandmaster. So something to get on the board with. And now there's a Rending Volley to take care of that. Rending Volley, a popular sideboard card against Jeskai decks.
Yep. You don't know exactly what creatures they're going to have, but barring a Dragon Master Outcast, this should get all of them.
It's a swamp here for Steven Garcia. So that's at least one basic for his battle land combinations. And now here,
Assuming it's not Ruinous Path.
I don't think he wants to play that either, given no targets. So it would be hard to cast. We assume correctly. Much better than Ruinous Path.
Yes.
Painful Truce for 3.
When you're on the play, the curve of turn 2, kill your play, turn 3, Painful Truce for 3, that's got to correlate very strongly with winning the game.
Oh, I'm interested. I'll pay through that to draw 3 cards. You better believe it. Mystic Monastery just passed the turn back. Kiefer off to a much slower start this game. Looks like Garcia did pick up a copy of Stubborn Denial within some of these cards here.
His creature base naturally trying to make Stubborn Denial as good as possible. Tasker, Gurmag Angler, Savage Knuckleblade.
Yep. Garcia's got to figure out where he wants to go next now. Looks like Wooded Foothills might be land number 4.
Yeah, I think he's trying to figure out if there's some way to play Savage Knuckleblade with Stubborn Denial backup, but I don't think there's a way to do it. He essentially needs to fetch for an island, so if he doesn't have a blue fetch land in his hand or a natural island, he can't do it. Because if he's only got 1 threat card here, and it happens to run into some sort of counterspell from Kiefer, it's really bad news. But I just don't think there's a way for Garcia to set this up. Obviously, he can cast the Knuckleblade, but he can't do it with counterspell backup.
What's next here for Steven Garcia? There is a Gurmag Angler. The big 5/5.
This, on the other hand, works quite well.
Yes. And this really feels like kind of what his deck is all about. It was kind of a mishmash in game number 1. We saw some mana issues, among other things there, but this looks a little bit more normal. And with, some counterspell backup now for this thing, Dispel was the draw. Sunken Hollow, the land.
Yeah, now he's sitting really tight here.
You think about the standard format, Grixis Green isn't something we've ever even really seen before. So an innovative deck here by Garcia. Currently down a game, but looking pretty good in this one.
Well, if Kiefer doesn't have a cheap way to break serve on this angler, it's very hard to race.
Yep. Kiefer going to sacrifice a Flooded Strand. Perhaps no size command on the way. Yep. We'll get confirmation on the modes there. It's certainly Return Soulfire Grandmaster. And it looks like Disdainful Stroke. So Jack was trying to draw a card to gain some life. Doesn't matter anymore. That spell gets countered.
There's still a wall up here. I think Garcia's got Stubborn Denial and Dispel in hand. Ruinous Path and Savage Knuckleblade.
A mishmash of stuff going on.
Yes.
The old Ruinous Path Savage Knuckleblade deck.
Right. The sampler.
Indeed. Smoldering Marsh was land number 5, and all Jack can do is pass the turn back now, so we're going to go back over to Steven Garcia. Hiya with the Angler. Kiefer going to fall down to 8. We might just have a protect the Angler approach right now.
I see a lot of post-board games play out this way.
Okay.
Where, assuming blue is in both decks, if someone sticks a threat, the other person doesn't have a removal spell for it right away, that's almost the whole game. Because once that person untaps with their threat in play, the counter spells will prevent the other person from coming back into the game.
A dig through time here for Kiefer. Gonna get to take a look at the top 7 cards, take 2 with him, see if we can find an answer to this Angler. He's found 2 cards he's happy with, so he selects those very quickly. Takes some time to go to the graveyard. We're gonna head back Jack's way. Fiery Impulse, the draw. He does have 2 copies of Fiery Impulse in the grip. It appears to be Jace. And it appears that will resolve.
Garcia's been sitting on this Ruinous Path for a while, so I doubt he cares very much about this.
I think as we have found out as a community, Ruinous Path is no hero's downfall.
No. Instant's a big deal on these cards. And also the mana bases are just not as accommodating to double black spells as they were last year.
Yeah.
You know, these 4-color decks are trying to do a lot of, you know, Savage Knuckleblade plus Tassiger, or, you know, Obzon colors with some blue cards in the sideboard. And when you start building your mana bases that way, your double black cards or double whatever cards become a lot less reliable.
Garcia does have Ruinous Path, had it the entire game. Finally has a target for it. Just unclear if he wants to cast it or not right now.
Well, I think Garcia wants to leave up double counterspell as much as he possibly can here. So it's just finding a way. Can he, you know, leave up the Sunken Hollow and the Lumbering Falls for his 2 blue sources and do everything else he wants to do with the leftover mana? Looks like that's not a huge problem.
Well, here's Ruinous Path, going to go after Jace. Let's see what we have here. Looks like Kiefer might want to defend. Valorous Stance going to go after the Angler.
Given Garcia's game plan here, I'm just assuming that this will be countered.
There's a Dispel. So we're building a bit of a stack here. That's a negate. There's a Stubborn Denial. So the counter war is over, and now Ruinous Path will resolve. Jace's going to bite the dust too, and now here comes the Angler. Kiefer's going to fall down to 3.
And 3 is a critical number here because Garcia has a Lumbering Falls in play. So even if Kiefer can answer the Angler at Sorcery Speed, he needs to have an answer for Lumbering Falls. Not the easiest card to answer.
Kiefer's draw for the turn was a Plains. Looks like he might be going double Fiery Impulse to get this angler off the battlefield. That's one. And now here comes number 2. Those kind of exchanges, though, if you're Steven Garcia, you're happy with that.
Yeah. At this point, the only thing that Kiefer can hope for is that Garcia doesn't attack with the Lumbering Falls out of respect for Crackling Doom. But with only 2 cards in hand, I'm assuming that Garcia is just going to go for it here.
Yep.
It's not even like he's all in on the Lumbering Falls because he has Knuckleblade and Ruinous Path as his leftovers.
If you have it, you have it. If you don't, I win. That might be the line of thought here for Garcia as he'll draw a card. Fiery Impulse, the draw. Will he fire up the creature land? He's reaching towards it. I do think it's the safest route to go.
Yeah, the problem here is if you go for Savage Knuckleblade here, Kiefer could just have Ojutai's command.
Yep. I think that's part of the reason Garcia's looking through the graveyard right now. At the very least, Jack is trying to represent some strength.
Or a Murderous Cut, or just, there's a lot of cards you can have if you go for Knuckleblade.
Yep.
There are only so many cards you can have if your play is Lumbering Falls.
There's 4 lands. Here comes the creature land, and in we go. And that'll do it. So Steven Garcia is going to win game number 2 here over Jack Kiefer. Grixis Green, Jeskai Black, getting ready for game number 3. And to note, as we're underneath 15 minutes, about to be underneath 14 minutes, not a lot of time here, and these games have taken a little while. And this is a format when the aggressive decks aren't involved, pretty slow.
Well, you've got the games themselves, which aren't necessarily over that fast. You have a lot of searching via fetch lands, and it's complicated fetching because the battle lands and how you sequence everything. That adds a lot of time. Also, just the graveyard is a huge resource for all of these decks. There's delve cards, there's cards like Ojutai's Command and Jace. So players are constantly picking up their own graveyard. They're going through their opponent's graveyard pretty frequently. You add this all up, and a lot of time just gets shaved out of the games. And when the games themselves take several turns to conclude, time is going to be a concern a good percentage of the time.
Well, you see the options there for players as far as sideboard is concerned. They've both gone back to the drawing board a touch here. So we'll see if things do change on the play or the draw here. But in the meantime, we are going to talk about the Star City Games newsletter. It's your source for Magic the Gathering news, and best of all, it's free to sign up for.
All the best going-ons over at Star City Games. A lot of information about the Open Series with the selected match of the week for you to view. Exclusive deck lists and advice from many of Star City Games columnists. An exclusive cardboard crack comic. And best of all, sign up is free over at starcitygames.com/newsletter.
Now, I've been informed that your pronunciation of didgeridoo is correct. It is accurate. I've been informed by our wonderful watchers on Twitter. And apparently, didgeridoo is a key. Key is capitalized in this tweet. It's a key player in the blue-red Minotaur's archetype of my Homelands Cube.
I would play a Homelands Cube constantly.
There is a follow-up tweet. If you are interested in a metagame breakdown, let me know.
Let's assume the answer is yes.
Yeah. The old Homelands Cube, huh? I can only imagine what's in that thing.
I just imagine that most games of Homelands Cube have to come down to decking because it's just literally impossible to get 20 points of damage on the other side of the table. There's just so many 2/3s for 4 in that set.
Oh, yeah.
No flying.
They're just running into each other.
I guess you have the bird legend.
Ah, yes, of course, the bird legend.
The Soraya the Falconeer or something? Is that a card? Did I just make this up? This has happened before.
Yeah, we've seen this happen.
Where my memory of old cards blurs with my memory of old things, and Soraya the Falconeer, ding.
You're right in there. All Falcons get +1/+1. Target. I can't even say without laughing. Target Falcon gains banding until end of turn.
Really good on defense.
Yes.
Flying and banding really don't play that well together. Doesn't come up all that often, but this is, by the way, in the top 20% of powerful cards in Homelands.
That's where you want to be.
Yes.
Okay. Got it. Now, what Falcons are in the set? Is there like a Zephyr Falcon?
I think, if my memory serves, the answer might actually be there are no Falcons.
No Falcons, yeah.
Maybe there's one. It's not a really supported tribe. I don't know. Maybe have all falcons just be turned into birds? I know they did the creature type wash.
Aha!
Yep.
We have at least one Mesa Falcon.
And you know what pumping on defense is good with, as this card was worthy of multiple arts. You know what's really good with pumping defense is banding.
Banding.
Because then there's no attack.
Yeah.
There's just no attack, you know?
That's simple. Apparently, we've also been informed that, yes, the format is caps super slow.
Very slow format.
Slow. So if you'd like to hang around.
Baron Senger's got to be like the best card, I would assume.
Baron Seigneur?
I imagine that's the best card in Homeland's Cube because you can actually kill someone in a game with that.
That thing flies, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, Baron Seigneur, that was a staple at the old fun time tables when I was a kid.
It's 8 mana 5/5 with some powers.
Yep.
Don't totally recall, but it's got to be a bomb in that format.
Looks like both players are going to keep their openers. They have to be a little bit quick here. Don't want to get a draw this early in the tournament. Don't really want an unintentional draw pretty much ever, but we got about 10 minutes. Kiefer going to sacrifice his Flooded Strand. He'll go down to 19. We'll see what land he wants to search up, basic or battle. It'll be a Prairie Stream. And there's the Baron. 8 mana, 5/5 flyer. When a creature is put in the graveyard, the same turn Baron Seigneur damage, a classic vampire ability. Put a +2/+2 count, a +2/+2 counter. You know, there's not a lot of those left. Regenerate target vampire, not 2 +1/+1 counters.
Yeah.
Put a +2/+2 counter.
That's. I'm also assuming that's been hit with an errata.
Maybe, perhaps. Here's a Jace. Looks like Garcia going to sacrifice his Bloodstained Mire. We'll see what land he wants to search up as he consults the grip. He does have a Fiery Impulse in his hand.
But does he have the luxury of fetching a mountain right now, or does he have to get a dual land? And decisions like this, you know, this is 30 seconds off the clock. This is 45 seconds off the clock. And all of this just pushes up the number of matches that end in draws.
We've been informed, by the way, that Soroya the Falconeer has been errated to all birds get +1/+1.
That makes sense.
Yeah. Big change in the metagame there. Smoldering Marsh was the weapon of choice here for Garcia. There's the basic island. Pass that turn back over to Jack. Not interested in casting Fiery Impulse just yet, it appears. I'm gonna give him a Jace activation.
If you were going to kill it when he loots, I think you should have killed it on your own turn.
I'm inclined to agree. Also, I would want to read the Jace pre-activation.
Right.
That's just personal preference there.
Or before putting it in your own deck.
Also true. A lot of good stuff going on with that card.
There's a lot of ways this could have been prevented.
Yeah.
That's all I'm saying.
See what Jack wants to discard here. Discard a Swamp. That leads me to believe he has other black mana floating around. I don't think he would just toss that one away. There's a Plains, pass that turn back. Gonna head back Garcia's way, it appears. Now here's a Fiery Impulse. Garcia will draw.
I wonder if he was so worried about Monastery Mentor that he was willing to do that. See, that's the line of play that justifies it. It's the one. It's the only one I can come up with.
Gurmag Angler was the draw. There's a basic forest. So Savage Knuckleblade's online. All right.
Big Nooks.
Will that resolve? The answer is yes. Kiefer will draw.
Just really wants to attack once, you know? Shows up all the time. So rare it gets a hit in.
Just wants to hang out.
Just one shot. I'm not even asking to pump. I'm not even asking for the 6 points.
No.
Give me one good crack.
One shot, one opportunity.
Yeah.
Mom spaghetti. There's a sunken hollow. See if Kiefer maybe has the roast here for the knuckle blade again. Just going to pass the turn back.
And this is exactly what I talked about in game 2. Now Garcia has an opportunity to untap with a wall of counters, potentially. And Kiefer is going to be trying to resolve pretty expensive spells into stubborn denials, negates, and dispels. That's a really tough way to do it. And in the meantime, Big Nux just truck on in.
Cinderglade is the land, and here comes Big Nux. Kiefer going to take that damage, fall down to 14. No pumps necessary. As now we're going to head back to Jack's play. Perhaps it's got something to do on Steven's end step. It's going to be an Ojutai's command.
But now this Knuckle Blade's pretty tough to kill.
Yeah.
If Garcia gets to untap, it looks like he's just going to leave the counter spell for something else there. Had an opportunity to counter and did not. Also, Roast doesn't kill it. You can simply pump through that.
Well, when you actually get to untap with the Knuckle Blade, it becomes a lot more relevant.
Yeah.
You know, as you mentioned, damage management rule is not going to get the job done for multiple reasons. And that's what Jeskai basically specializes in. Looks like we might have a judge call here. A question about Jace. Now, when you do discard the 5th card with Jace, then there's a trigger that goes in the stack for the transformation.
Yes.
Into the Planeswalker. So I imagine that's what the question is about, but we'll get confirmation on what the question is about here in just a second.
You can also just kill it in response to the activation. That's fine, too.
Correct.
You can he has to do it in response because once the loot resolves, it just happens. So he has to do it in response.
It looks like that's what Steven wants confirmation of.
Yeah, there's none of the words that denote triggers in this text box. It's all part of the resolution of the tap ability.
Sure. No periods and ands and stuff like that.
Whenever, then. There's some words that denote triggers. That's all part of the resolution of this card.
Well, I imagine his players will be granted a bit of a time extension.
It does, demand, it opens up the question of why not just do this on the end of your own turn.
Yeah, I'm not sure why I guess, the question I have, if I'm Jack and I'm playing Steven, is why are you letting me draw and discard?
Right.
If you don't, if you want Jace dead, just kill Jace. Kiefer, Mystic Monastery, Mountain, a couple other cards in hand. Jace is going to die, discarding Mystic Monastery to the other part of Polygon's command, and now there will be the loot from Jace. Looks like Swamp might be going down. Mountain, a couple of different options here for Jack. There goes Mountain. There's Pluto Delta. That's land number 5. Now pass the turn back. Garcia going to untap. Stubborn Denial still in hand. Crater's Claws too.
Really good setup here. I mean, he's still got Stubborn Denial. I'm fairly sure he can get the Gurmag Angler into play this turn with Stubborn Denial back up, and a Crater's Claws as leftovers. I mean, it's a very well situated hand here. And Big Nux just uncontested.
Just throwing haymakers.
Wailing away.
Yeah. Sunken Hollow, a land that would enter the battlefield untapped here. Bloodstained Mire, another option as far as lands are concerned. Gonna sacrifice that Bloodstained Mire. Perhaps an Angler on the way now.
Yeah. I mean, I like getting the second threat into play while you still have Stubborn Denial back up.
Yeah. They're Sunken Hollow. Time is correct. These two players were granted a bit of an extension on that judge call. So they're going to be about under a minute here.
So Kiefer at this point, most likely playing for a draw. Garcia can definitely win in the allotted time.
Especially when you're adding a 5/5 to the battlefield.
In fact, he can win next turn.
Yeah. And a couple of different ways to do it. You know, attack step with Savage Knuckleblade. Defend with Stubborn Denial. He even has a copy of Crater's Claws in hand. There's a couple avenues here. There's Angler. And now Kiefer's going to sack a land, so perhaps a counterspell on the way. We'll see.
I think Kiefer with another Ochitai's Command in hand, so.
Okay.
Definitely has to go for it here. I would imagine Garcia will fire back with the Stubborn Denial.
Finally cash that in.
Pushing through another large threat when it doesn't seem like Kiefer can handle the first one seems pretty great.
There's Ochitai's Command. There is Stubborn Denial. So Angler in. Now we head back Kiefer's way. And Kiefer's at 9 now, too, so no pump even necessary. We'll see if Kiefer has any answers. Two large threats on the battlefield.
Yeah, surviving combat and a Crater's Claws is going to be really rough for Kiefer. If it's not this next turn for Garcia, the turn after that's going to be really hard.
Flooded Strand is the land. Jack will be turn 1 of turns. So we'll have turns 1, 3, and 5. For Garcia, turns 2 and 4.
But Garcia's got a good shot at getting it done in turn 2. He's also got a good shot at getting it done in turn 4.
Yeah. Well, now it's time to play a spell. The question is, what's it going to be? Utter End. Yep.
That works.
Yep, Knuckleblade down. Follow up here for Kiefer. He's going to sacrifice his Flooded Strand, go get himself a Prairie Stream. I imagine some sort of creature on the way. Jace or Soulfire Grandmaster, something like that.
Yep.
Yep, there's Jace. Over to Garcia. Mountain the draw. Land's not particularly helpful here. Well, I like setting in with the Angler as the first order of business.
Yep. Jack said if he doesn't block. I think Garcia is 1 mana short of being able to claws him out if there's a chump block.
Yeah, but a clause right now, because there was no block, is going to get the job done. Steve Garcia is going to win this match here over Jack Kiefer, 2-1. Grixis Green going to take care of Jeskai Black. And for Steven Garcia, with his innovative deck, he starts this thing off 2-0.
And, you know, it's a kind of a recurring theme we so far in the 2 rounds. When there's blue in the player's deck, when someone gets one of the quality threat cards into play, it doesn't get answered right away, and they get to untap with counter spells. It's very challenging for the other deck to come back.
Yeah, I'm curious if this is just a hang-up that happens with just Jeskai Black, or if it's other things as well.
Well, Jeskai Black, I think, is the place where it's most pronounced, because you have threats that are very high quality, and you have a spread of removal that's all over the place. So if you can't kill something the first time around, it's likely that you're only drawing to a couple removal spells in your entire deck to get the Angler off the table. You know,